Hi, my name is Mitra. I'm a servant. I serve through teaching, coaching, consulting, or any other way that I can find to share what I know with those who want to know. And this Lights On podcast is one of those ways. It was created with consciousness and mindful living in heart. So join us as we travel through many roads of learning and transformation together. And if you enjoy our podcast, please give us feedback by rating us 5-star and share us with others if you think they may benefit from it. On behalf of my team, I thank you for your presence. This week's episode is a longer episode, and it's an interview of a podcast that Dr. Doreen Downing had with me. Dr. Downing is an expert and a coach in voice finding. She has a website called Essential Speaking, and her message is find your voice, change your life. We sat down and spoke about how and what experience I had as a child that influenced the voice I have today. And I hadn't prepared for this, and I wasn't sure what questions Dr. Downing will ask me. And it was interesting what came up for me. And I spoke about the voice, the vulnerable voice that was somehow not intentionally, but without design, was sort of removed from my childhood experience, and how I was called the strong child, the wise child, and as a result, I really didn't have any point of reference or experience as a young person to my vulnerable voice and how that influenced my life as an adult. It's an interesting chat, and I suggest that you take a listen, bring your favorite drink, and it's going to be longer, as I said, than normal. I speak about the importance of the vulnerable voice. It's actually just as important as our powerful, strong voice, and how the voices are not given to us, because if they are given, then they can be taken away. Anyways, let's take a listen together.
Welcome to the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast with psychologist Dr. Doreen Downing. Listen in as Doreen interviews people who felt they didn't have a voice or who suffered extreme speaking anxiety. You'll hear stories about how they struggled to speak up, what they did to find their authentic voice, and the confidence they now feel to speak up and make an impact. If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. And now, here is Doreen.
Hello, I'm Dr. Doreen Downing, and I'm a psychologist and host of the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast. What I love to do in these episodes is to invite guests who have a story about finding their voice, a story about perhaps not having had a voice, so they know the difference. And today I'm really excited because this is somebody I've met, and you'll see why I've invited her to be on the podcast because of her background. Hi, Mitra.
Hi, Doreen. So nice to be here with you.
Oh, yeah. You could already tell, folks, by her voice, right? It's just so calming. But I want to read a little bit about you so that people will get to know you right away and see why I'm so attracted to you and what you offer. Mitra Manish is the creator of the Mindful Attentionist Coaching, and that's MAC program, an inside-out program for deep training of global mindful coaches. She is also the founder of Inner Map, an innovative new mindfulness app, and the host of Lights On, a podcast offering support for a mindful life. She is a mindfulness thought leader, storyteller, and educator with almost 4 decades of experience helping people of all ages and many different cultures to live, love, and lead more consciously at home and at work. Big breath. Another welcome to you, Mitra.
Thank you, Doreen. Love the way you read it. I felt good about that.
Well, I'm so happy when I read it because it's so much more, finding your voice and being able to express yourself more authentically in the world is so much more than just getting up on a stage and learning techniques. And I love your phrase, the inside out program for deep training.
Is there other way? Is there another way to do it?
Not in my life experience or my own journey. That's what I discovered, is that all the kinds of things that I did at first to find my voice, like Toastmasters and speaking trainings, gave me a good cover, but it didn't really reach as deep as I wanted to, or felt like what was possible for me, more potential. And it's an inside job. You are so right.
Thank you. It is. I think everything has an inside and outside, and it only goes home totally and in a sustainable way when you have paid attention to both. So I call it form and substance. In fact, that used to be the name of my business. So there is the inner and there is the outer. But the question is, where are we paying attention most to? We live in a physical world that pays a lot of attention to the form, and that's great. But there's also substance that if it's not there, no form will really compensate for that lack.
That is so profound, my dear. What I want to start with, and what usually our listeners are interested in first, is just to hear something about your childhood. I'm a psychologist, so I always like to give a little attention to where you grew up, how you grew up, what were those early influences around your voice?
I was born and raised in Iran, in Tehran, Iran. So I'm Persian. And it was very interesting. I was the youngest of three. And I think by the time I arrived, all the juices of the family, especially my mother, had been spent onto energy consuming. I think that's the best way to put it. Children before me. So I feel like I arrived and had a look around and decided that, oops, there's not much room here for anything. So I better, take care of myself. And it was really fascinating as I was contemplating on your questions and the voice and how you arrive at your voice. And my story is fascinating, at least to me, that it wasn't that I didn't have a voice. It was that through a process that was interesting, my vulnerable voice was taken away. So I remember that everybody called me the wise child. And I give you one scene, and I think as a psychologist, that will really explain my childhood. So imagine it's a weekend. There are 15 kids in the room, many of them older than me, a couple of them younger than me. And we're making a lot of noises, and an adult comes in and checks on us to make sure we're okay. So he opened the door and he looked in the room and he said, "Oh, Mitra is here. So all is well." He closed the door and left. And I remember the scene because I immediately realized that I cannot be silly like all the other kids. I cannot also jump up and down and break things and do things that kids do. And that, I think, continued in my life. And it was a very backdoor way of taking the vulnerable voice away. And it wasn't only that relative and one person. It was the the reputation, if you like, that was developed for some reason or given to me, because I'm sure I didn't hire a PR agency those days to do it for me. So somebody somewhere decided you need to be the wise child. And it sounds really good. It sounds like, oh, that's fantastic. But then the wise child came out at the price of the vulnerable child.
Oh,
And the vulnerable child could never speak.
that is so clearly described. I would say that we have a similar history around my voice, and I think I'd never really called it vulnerable voice. I think I've thought of it as my precious one, but I was always the serious one. So, and responsible. I was actually the oldest. So in a way, I had to manage everything. And so somebody might come into a room like what happened to you and say, oh, Doreen's here. Everything's going to be fine. But I think I'm so glad that you talked about this inner one that's had to get in the back seat and not be in the front seat. And what that was. And, you don't know that early on.
No.
Society, people around us identify us, and we still haven't quite decided who we are at that age.
And also, it sounds good. If they said, oh, you're the stupid one, everybody would object. Because even those days, everyone said, well, don't talk to a child like that. So that we never realized the opposite of it also has a weight that is not really a good weight to put on a child. And I don't think anybody did it intentionally. I think it just gradually, got developed somehow. But I realized it because of my journey that started quite earlier on. I lost my best friend when I was 12. I lost my father when I was 14. I lost my country when I was, in my early 20s. And the losses continued. So the question was, where do I go to find that fun, playful child that I know existed in me. And I know to this day she does. I'm in my 60s and I am ready to play at any time. And it's hard to really make her quiet anymore. And I don't have to. But even if I wanted to, I can't, because she has so much life and she has so much energy that she's not contained anymore, thank God. But it was a major obstacle. And because it was chocolate covered and it was a nice title, the wise child, who could go and object to this? It's just, sorry, I've come to complain about my adults in life and they called me a wise child. Everybody says, oh, that's fantastic. But it's not, because then that limits you as a child. A child who doesn't know these things and doesn't have the whereabouts to, like, what do I do with this unbelievable title? And it was only years later when I started like my deep work that I realized, oh my God, I really need to allow the vulnerable me to also have a voice, which really made me conclude that our vulnerable voice has just as much value as our powerful, strong voice.
Yes, the vulnerable voice has just as much power as what we are calling the strong one. And I've had some people on my podcast that have talked about being loud, and that was his way of covering up his vulnerability. And this, I hope he's listening at some point to this, because this really hits home for him about hiding his more vulnerable side. And the whole idea about being playful, I think how I did it was through alcohol.
Wow.
That's how I got my playful spirit out there. Yeah. And, irresponsible and just, not caring about anything and, kind of shedding any kind of Doreen's the serious one and Doreen can handle situations. She's responsible. But so that was early on in my journey was using alcohol.
Wow.
And coming to terms with that at some point, but that's another story. Coming back to you, though, the loss of, a parent and loss, a lot of losses there. You said loss of your country, but you made it over here. What was that choice about? How did you arrive in this country, and how did you make a decision about where to plant yourself?
Well, I planted myself in many countries before coming here. I actually, US was the first country I came to before the war and revolution in Iran. In the 70s, in 1977, I came as a student to US. I was in University of Houston in Texas. And and then I had to go back, and I got stuck because the revolution happened and the doors were closed. So I literally walked out of my country into Turkey, which was a border of Iran and Turkey. I mean, walked out of my country. I know people use this as a walked out, but I literally walked out because
one foot in front of the other foot.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's another story. But yeah, I came out and then ended up living in Paris in Europe for a while, and then moved to Australia, and then moved to Canada, and then eventually came back to US, and I've been here for I think 18 years maybe or so. I've been here. So it was a coming back home, really, back to US, and making this my permanent home, whatever permanence means in my life. I've moved so many times that I don't think my permanent is as permanent as what other people refer to as permanent. But that's how I came back to US, and I'm living in Los Angeles right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a sense that you had a wake up or some kind of shift. Just quickly, though, I was curious about what you studied in Houston.
I was studying economics. Yeah, it was very interesting, and the culture shock of the 70s, and I loved. I still am in love with anything from the 70s, the music, the movies, the colors, the everything there. But yeah, I was studying economics, and it was a very interesting times. And back in Iran, that was when the pre-revolution events were happening, and Shah was being objected to. And for the first time, I remember in 77 when Shah came to the king of Iran, that's what I'm referring to for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, came to visit Washington. There were a lot of demonstrations and objections. So I could tell something was about to happen. I didn't know what. We couldn't even imagine what has happened since then in our wildest imagination. But yeah, it was a very interesting, challenging times for me, but also very informative, as you said, as my I think inner world was forming, the outer world was in complete chaos for me.
Mm.
And that actually helped my journey, believe it or not, because I realized the outer world is not where I can actually have an anchor. There are no anchors. Whatever I thought it was my anchor, my family, my studying, my country, home, everything, all the things that we call our safety net, whatever it means to you, it was being just revamped and redesigned. So that was the invitation, a harsh invitation, but an invitation anyways, to go in and understand that the true anchor, the stability, the trusted source that I was looking for outside of me was residing inside of me. And once I found that, then I was quite differently and more able to work with the outer events of my life.
Well, again, such a description of your own process, so that tapping into and discovering, say a little bit more about what that process was for you.
Mm-hmm. So I call it was either meditation or medication, but it's just a joke, honestly, because it rhymes. I love rhyming. But it wasn't that. It was really, what do I do? I mean, you referred to drinking. And I felt that anything that was outwardly was not an option for me. I have no idea why. I really don't understand the process I went through. But like I never, which is unbelievable. I was on my own, alone in another country. I never touched drugs. I never touched alcohol. For some reason, must be, another journey that I've had, maybe out of many other journeys. Sometimes you resolve some things and you don't need to revisit them in this lifetime. But they were not an option for me. And I really was determined to do something with my life. I don't know what that meant. I was so young. It's not like I had this clear vision of like where I want to be in life. But I knew that it couldn't be just like sit back and watch your life. Well, my life told me I can't do that by its very events. Mm-hmm. But I was open to really seeing that. And I think I realized earlier on that voice is not given. Voice is developed by yourself, because if it was given, it could have been taken away. And it was taken away through the political, process that I saw take place in front of me. So I remember going on streets and objecting to, say, for instance, what was happening to women in Iran after revolution. And I realized that, so they can't give my voice, because anytime that they're threatened by that voice, either collectively or individually, that they can just say no more, like, do not speak about this. Mm-hmm. So all of these little by little added to a more comprehensive way of understanding the value of a voice that is developed by me, for me, and through me. And then the true voice came. Of course, it would have been wonderful, and it was wonderful when you as my friend, you as my teacher, you as my, anybody in my life were giving me my voice. I would have loved that. And I did have those opportunities. But I also realized, because I saw everything crumbling, and I thought, okay, so this can't be. I can't rely on anyone. The friends that I had are no longer there. I just left the country. The contacts that you develop, I'd pick up the phone and say, Doreen, can you help this with that? Like, they were all gone. The possessions, the home, I came out with a bag smaller than a bag that I take shopping today. The only thing I had in them was some photos and about approximately $800 US. That's all I had. No visa, no place to go. I remember when I arrived in Turkey, I was cold and I didn't have enough clothing. So, because I didn't know what's going to happen, I couldn't bring a luggage when I was walking out of the country. So I realized that I gotta be it. I'm it. And then other people will arrive. But I can't count on them and then ask them to make me arrive. So I arrived at my voice, and then other helpers, supporters, or objectors. I don't know. There were a lot of objections to it too. It wasn't all like wonderful. I found my voice and there it was, heaven in front of me. It wasn't, but it didn't matter as much, because I knew where the anchor was. I knew where the value was. I knew where the source was. And that really, really helped me.
Yes. And there were two things I noticed. One is being able to locate it, identify it, meaning your anchor, your source within, and being able to take yourself there. So there's a knowing that it's there, but there's also knowing how to access it. And to do that, pretty much, I think your work is about mindfulness, right? So it's like being mindful of when you're leaving that area of anchoring inside of yourself.
Yes, that's a great way of saying it. Exactly. Seeing, being an observer of you leaving your voice. And I knew that whenever I got upset with others, I knew I was leaving my own true voice, because then I was expecting others to give me the power that I was looking for Immediately I would remember that, what I haven't given myself, I'm now hoping, expecting, demanding others to give to me. So that became a very interesting practice for me, that the moment I got upset with somebody, I thought, okay, what am I not offering myself? What am I not understanding about myself that I'm getting upset with whoever, my friend, my lover, my child, my whoever that I'm, my colleague, my client. And then it became a lot of inner work, which continues to this day. And I don't think it will ever end.
I know exactly what you mean. I feel like I started on the journey, the inner work journey, and it's vast within us. And we're just so full of potential. And I love discovery. One of the things that I'm getting from you too is that by all of your experiences, you've done a lot of traveling, and I love to travel different countries. And that feels like somewhat similar of traveling within myself and discovery. Aha,
Mm-hmm.
That kind of just turning a corner in a strange city and going, oh, wow, look at what I've just seen. And that's the external, of course, but I feel like I have that same experience when I discover more about myself, or some of the things that you just said around being angry. Well, let's explore that. Let's look at it. It's like a new territory, you might say.
Yes, yes, yes. I love that inner and outer traveling. That is true. It is the same thing, except the difference, I think, for me is that I don't need to go anywhere when I go in. I can just make some space, some pause, and there I am. There's no ticket, no itinerary, no reservation. But even going physically to somewhere else, I mean, those days before COVID when we could do that, I remember I would have a set itinerary. Of course, I would know where I'm going. And, after, I think I lost count after 60, 70 countries where I visited, then I would have some plans. But then I would always leave some room for the unknown to arrive, because if everything was set, I might as well stay where I was, certain and had plans and had all those things knowingly. But when there was room for surprise, for unknown to arrive, quite often I remember I was in Singapore, and the taxi driver and I got into discussions, and he was telling me how his daughter was like into these things. And I said, why don't you introduce me to your daughter?
Oh.
So his daughter came to my hotel. We got to know each other. She took me to university. I ended up going out to dinner with him. It became such an amazing relationship that got me to know about the culture, the local culture, and this specific family's culture. Had I like organized everything to the last minute, then there wouldn't be that opportunity to get to know them and their family and get to really experience living like a local for a few days with them.
Oh, yeah. I had a similar experience in Italy, and I would say it's one of the best nights of my entire life, just totally arriving and opening up to meeting people. And they said, oh, you know how to speak Malay. Oh, we're going to meet the Minister of Education from Malaysia. And I went, oh, and they said, you've got to come. And so, yeah, Italy, the just going out all night. So I know that living in the unknown. So, but also, I just feel like I don't want to end with you, Mitra, because it's getting to be time, but I want to go specifically to mindfulness now, because that, living in each moment is an unknown, really, if we're living mindfully. So say a little bit more about voice and mindfulness, whatever comes to you about that.
Sure. Well, the beauty of practicing mindfulness, and it's always practicing, not mastering, is that you understand the nature, the paradoxical nature of life. So what was true a second ago may not be true right now. So for me to experience and meet that experience, I need to be in the present moment. And there you go. one of the most important principles of mindfulness is being in the present moment. And then it's the awareness. So there are 5 aspects, the way I define, and mindfulness has many, many different definitions. The way I define it, that mindfulness is acceptance and awareness of our present moment experience with a sense of curiosity and compassion. So presence, acceptance, awareness, 3, and then curiosity and compassion, the how of it. So when I am aware of my voice, when I am in present time meeting my voice or the voice of others, then there is a need, because sometimes I say present is not pleasant. So I need to have that sense of acceptance, that which doesn't mean agreement, but it's just, oh, that's interesting. Exactly what we were talking about. I'm getting provoked, or my friend is getting provoked, and really accepting that. And then the 2 others come in, which is, can I stay curious about this? And can I hold it with a sense of kindness and compassion? And so those principles, you understand that human beings haven't really changed that much. Because if this was true so many thousands of years ago, and we see that all the principles of the Eastern world, all the so-called wisdom practices are still true to this day with all of our technology advancement, it is exactly true. They say Rumi's poetry, it's one of my teachers of study, Rumi's philosophy, not just poetry, is he is the most read poet in the world. He lived 800 years ago. You would think it would go out of fashion. But the truth, exactly, never ever ages. So really going to those roots and allowing these principles, whatever you want to call them, and I'm not attached to the name mindfulness, because some people have some sensitivity to them, really understanding things from a deeper place, an inner place, is very helpful to activate your voice, to hear your own voice, because that's another thing. The other thing that I think is very important is that when I hear my inner voice, then I can express my outer voice far more clearly and communicate that with that. So that is a tool for me. Mindfulness practices are a tool for me to access my voice so that I can express it, hold it, but get curious about it, and also be compassionate about it when it's really challenging and difficult, either for me or for others to hear.
Oh, that's so beautiful. You have programs, and I want to make sure that people can find you, because it feels like you've opened up opportunities for people to get to know themselves much more, like you say, deeply in it within. So how do people find you?
My name, mitramanesh.com. Everything I do is there. And if anybody is interested, I have a lot of free offerings. You mentioned my podcast. I have on YouTube and social media. They can just Google my name, Mitra Manesh, and it's all on mitramanesh.com anyways. I also offer a lot of classes through UCLA. I teach mindful living actually at UCLA's Mindful Awareness Research Center. So they can find me there, or just check the work that I've done, and it's available online.
Yeah, just Google. Well, one of the things I'm leaving with is that it's ironic that you were labeled a wise child, and then that became some kind of a container that didn't really help you express more vulnerability. However, your wisdom today, what you shared, is wise. So in a way, it just strikes me that maybe those people saw the deeper nature in you, the wise you. However, it was just a little too early for you to come into the wise teacher you are now.
Yeah, it could be, but more importantly, this so-called, and it's not wisdom, it's really knowing and exploration that I've done, is not at the price of the playful fun me. I mean, those who work with me and take classes with me, they know, like, we have a lot of laughter and we have a lot of playfulness. And then we also have some wisdom that we share amongst ourselves, but it is not at the price of that. And yes, and I appreciate what they probably had something to do with my journey, what they saw or how they labeled me. But I also was quite aware later on that the tuition may have been too high, the way I had paid that tuition. And I had to really access the playful me and the fun me, and the one who understands that this whole life cannot be taken that seriously, even though our inner world is quite deep and fascinating.
Uh-huh. Well, I just love swimming in this inner world with you, dancing in it, and playing with you in the inner world. So thank you very much for sharing yourself and sharing your voice today.
Thank you, Doreen, for inviting me. It was amazing how you reached out and contacted me. I'm very, very happy that we connected, and happy that I could share something on your platform.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today for this episode of Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. Each person Doreen interviews shares what has helped them find their voice. You can learn from these guests and find your voice so you can be confident to speak up and speak out. And remember to download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. We hope you enjoyed the show and will return next time. Until then, goodbye for now.
Hope this episode answered the question or two for you, or provoked and inspired questions in you. I'm so grateful you showed up and listened up. Until the next time, be well and stay curious.